On this day in 1933, fire destroys the Reichstag, Germany's parliament building. A Dutch communist is found inside and arrested. Hitler immediately declares that communists are plotting to overthrow the government. He demands emergency powers to protect Germany. President Hindenburg agrees. The next day, Hitler suspends freedom of speech, freedom of the press, and freedom of assembly. He arrests thousands. Elections scheduled for the next week take place under martial law. The Reichstag fire gives Hitler the crisis he needs to consolidate power. February 27, 1933. Adolf Hitler has been Chancellor of Germany for exactly 4 weeks. He was appointed on January 30, 1933, not through a democratic mandate, but through backroom political deals. Conservative politicians thought they could control him. They were very wrong. But Hitler's position is still precarious. The Nazi Party doesn't have a majority in the Reichstag, Germany's parliament. In the November 1932 elections, the Nazis actually lost seats. They're the largest single party, but they need coalition partners to govern. And many of those partners are unreliable. President Paul von Hindenburg, the aging World War I hero who appointed Hitler, doesn't trust him. Hindenburg is a conservative nationalist who views Hitler as a useful tool to combat communism, but he has no intention of letting Hitler have unlimited power. Hitler needs a crisis. He needs something dramatic to justify suspending democratic processes and consolidating power. He needs Germans to be so terrified that they'll accept authoritarian measures as necessary for their safety. The communists are his perfect enemy. The German Communist Party is large and well organized. They represent a real political threat to the Nazis. And many Germans, especially middle-class and wealthy Germans, are terrified of communism after the Bolshevik Revolution in Russia. Hitler has been Chancellor for less than a month, but he's already preparing. He's appointed Hermann Goering as Minister of the Interior for Prussia, giving the Nazis control of police in Germany's largest state. Goering has been recruiting SS stormtroopers as auxiliary police, essentially militarizing law enforcement with Nazi paramilitaries. Elections are scheduled for March 5th, just 1 week away. Hitler needs the Nazis to win decisively. He needs something to happen that will shift public opinion dramatically in his favor. Something that will justify emergency measures and crush his opponents. On the evening of February 27, 1933, he gets exactly what he needs. February 27, 1933. Around 9 p.m., a passerby notices flames inside the Reichstag building. He alerts police. Within minutes, fire brigades arrive, but the fire is spreading rapidly. Multiple locations inside the building are burning simultaneously, suggesting arson with accelerants. The Reichstag's main chamber is engulfed. The massive glass dome glows orange against the night sky. Flames shoot through windows. The building that symbolizes German democracy is being consumed by fire. Police enter the building and find a man inside. He's stripped to the waist, sweating, carrying fire-starting materials. His name is Marinus van der Lubbe, a 24-year-old Dutch communist. He's arrested immediately. Van der Lubbe doesn't deny setting the fire. In fact, he confesses readily. He claims he acted alone as a protest against the Nazi government. He says he wanted to inspire German workers to rise up against fascism. His confession seems straightforward, but investigators are puzzled. Van der Lubbe is partially blind and not particularly bright. Could he really have started fires in multiple locations throughout the massive building so quickly and efficiently? The Reichstag is enormous. Setting fires simultaneously in different chambers would require planning, accomplices, and inside knowledge of the building. Hitler and Goering arrive at the scene around 10 p.m. Hitler looks at the burning building and immediately declares it's a communist conspiracy. He doesn't wait for investigation. He doesn't consider other possibilities. Within minutes of seeing the fire, he's already constructed the narrative. Communists are attempting to overthrow the government, and emergency measures are required. Goering publicly states that the fire is the beginning of a communist uprising. He claims police have found communist plans to seize government buildings and assassinate Nazi leaders. No such plans are ever produced, but the claims are broadcast widely. Within hours of the fire, Hitler moves to exploit it. He meets with President Hindenburg early on February 28 and demands emergency powers. He tells Hindenburg that Germany faces an imminent communist revolution. The Reichstag fire is just the beginning. Communist terrorists are planning attacks across the country. Only immediate, decisive action can save Germany. Hindenburg, old and easily manipulated, agrees. On February 28, 1933, less than 24 hours after the fire, he signs the Reichstag Fire Decree, officially called the Decree for the Protection of People and State. The decree is catastrophic for German democracy. It suspends most civil liberties guaranteed by the Weimar Constitution. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, freedom of assembly, freedom of association, all suspended. The right to privacy of postal and telephone communications, eliminated. Protections against unlawful searches and seizures, gone. The decree also allows the national government to override state governments. This centralizes power in Hitler's hands and eliminates the federal structure that had limited Nazi control. Most ominously, the decree allows protective custody, indefinite detention without trial. This becomes the legal basis for the concentration camp system. Anyone can be arrested and held indefinitely without charges, without access to lawyers, without judicial review. That same day, mass arrests begin. Communist Party leaders are rounded up. Social Democrats are arrested. Trade unionists are detained. Journalists critical of the Nazis disappear into custody. In the days following the fire, over 4,000 people are arrested across Germany. The arrests continue through the week leading up to the March 5 elections. The Communist Party is effectively banned. Its candidates can't campaign. Its newspapers are shut down. Many of its voters are intimidated or imprisoned. The elections will not be free or fair. March 5th, 1933. Elections take place under martial law. The Communist Party is banned. Many opposition leaders are in jail. SA stormtroopers patrol polling places, intimidating voters. Nazi propaganda dominates the media. Independent newspapers have been shut down or censored. The Nazis still don't win an outright majority. They get 43.9% of the vote, an increase from previous elections, but not the overwhelming mandate Hitler wanted. Combined with their coalition partners, the German National People's Party, they have just over 50%. But it's enough. With their coalition majority and the emergency powers from the Reichstag Fire Decree, the Nazis can do whatever they want. And what they want is to eliminate democracy entirely. On March 23rd, less than a month after the fire, the Reichstag passes the Enabling Act. This law gives Hitler the power to enact laws without parliamentary approval. It essentially makes Hitler a dictator. The Reichstag votes itself into irrelevance. The vote isn't free or fair. Communist delegates are banned from attending. They're either arrested or in hiding. Social Democratic delegates who vote against the act are harassed and threatened. Only 94 out of 120 Social Democrats even dare to vote no. The final tally is 444 for, 94 against. With the Enabling Act, Hitler no longer needs the Reichstag, President Hindenburg, or any democratic institution. He can rule by decree. The Nazi dictatorship is now legally established. Over the following months, all other political parties are banned or dissolve themselves under pressure. Trade unions are abolished. Independent organizations are either Nazified or destroyed. By July 1933, Germany is a one-party state. The transformation from democracy to dictatorship takes less than 6 months, and it all began with the Reichstag fire on February 27th. The question that haunts historians: did the Nazis set the Reichstag fire themselves, or did they simply exploit a lucky coincidence? Marinus van der Lubbe confessed and was executed in 1934. He maintained until his death that he acted alone, but the evidence suggests otherwise. The fire spread too quickly and burned in too many locations for one partially blind man to have set it all. Many historians believe the Nazis orchestrated the fire. The timing was too perfect. Hitler needed a crisis before the March elections, and he got one. The Nazis' response was too prepared, too immediate. Within hours, they had a fully developed propaganda narrative, an emergency decree ready. Hermann Göring had access to the Reichstag through an underground tunnel, connecting it to his official residence. SA stormtroopers could have entered the building, set fires, and escaped without being seen. Van der Lubbe could have been a patsy, either a willing accomplice who didn't understand he was being used, or an innocent man drugged and placed at the scene. Some evidence suggests van der Lubbe was manipulated. He had been unemployed and homeless, drifting across Europe. He had made previous failed attempts to burn government buildings as political protests. The Nazis could have learned of him through their extensive surveillance, approached him, and used him as their scapegoat. However, other historians argue van der Lubbe really did act alone. He confessed in detail. He explained his methods. There's no definitive proof the Nazis were involved. They may have simply been incredibly opportunistic, seizing on a genuine communist arson attempt and exploiting it brilliantly. The truth may never be known with certainty. What is certain is that the fire served Nazi interests perfectly. Whether they caused it or merely used it, the result was the same: the destruction of German democracy. In September 1933, the Nazis put Marinus van der Lubbe on trial, along with 4 other defendants, all communists. The trial is held in Leipzig and is supposed to demonstrate communist guilt to the world. But the trial backfires spectacularly. The other defendants, including Georgy Dimitrov, a Bulgarian communist who later becomes a prominent Soviet official, defend themselves brilliantly. They expose contradictions in the Nazi case. They humiliate Göring when he testifies. They argue convincingly that van der Lubbe couldn't have set all the fires alone. International observers attending the trial are skeptical of the Nazi narrative. The evidence of a broader communist conspiracy falls apart under scrutiny. The prosecution can't prove the other defendants were involved. In the end, only van der Lubbe is convicted. The other 4 defendants are acquitted, much to Hitler's fury. The trial fails to legitimize the Nazi narrative of a communist plot. Van der Lubbe is sentenced to death and beheaded by guillotine in January 1934. He's 24 years old. To the end, he maintains he acted alone. Whether he was a communist martyr, a Nazi patsy, or simply a confused young man used by forces he didn't understand, remains debated. The failure of the trial doesn't matter politically. By the time it concludes, the Nazis have already consolidated power. Democracy is already dead. The Enabling Act is already law. The concentration camps are already operational. The truth about the fire is irrelevant. The damage is done. In 2008, 75 years after his execution, Marinus van der Lubbe is posthumously pardoned by Germany. Historians concluded he was likely used by the Nazis and didn't receive a fair trial, but the pardon can't undo history. February 27, 1933 represents the death of German democracy. Whether the Nazis set the fire themselves or simply exploited it brilliantly doesn't change the outcome. One night of flames gave Hitler the justification to suspend civil liberties, arrest thousands, and establish a dictatorship. The Reichstag fire reveals how quickly democracies can collapse when leaders exploit fear. Hitler used a crisis, real or manufactured, to convince Germans that emergency measures were necessary. He promised the restrictions were temporary, needed only until the communist threat was eliminated. The fire also shows how a single event can be leveraged to justify sweeping changes. Within 24 hours, fundamental rights were suspended. Within a month, democracy was effectively over. What makes the Reichstag fire particularly chilling is its effectiveness as propaganda. Most Germans believed the communist conspiracy narrative. They accepted the emergency decree. They voted for the Nazis in the March elections. Many genuinely thought Hitler was protecting them from chaos and revolution. And here's what came to light decades later. SA chief Ernst Röhm told confidants that the Nazis did set the fire. But Hitler had him executed during the Night of the Long Knives in 1934, silencing anyone who